the Demon Hunters, I believe, in Europe this week has 2 Sigil of Flame in there. And my first thought was, it's pretty good against Rogue, right? Just because we talk so much about Immolation Aura, and the second you don't get the max use out of one, you feel like you've missed out, right? Whereas with 2 Sigil of Flame and 2 Immolation Aura against Rogue specifically, it feels much easier to kind of use them way more liberally. But that's not the case here for Felkeine, as we do dive into game 1 of our second match of the day.
We'll wait some time for Bunny to mulligan, but this is not... I know I've played this game before where I actually saw it on Spectator when I said this, but just purely based on Felkaine's reaction, and I haven't seen it, I think he has Skull far left, or he has a dumpable card far left and Skull in his hand somewhere else, just based on his reaction to how the mulligan has gone down, because he's certainly seen it already. Shout out to his webcam setup as well. I like this. A nice clean room, a made bed, and a nice flex on a podium in the background of just reminding everyone of why he's here in the first place. Very nice framing indeed.
They're on Bunnyhopper's side, though. I was going to say okay, Sol wins this prize, though I'm pretty sure he cheated.
I didn't. I swear to God, I did not cheat.
Okay, well, we'll see. I don't know how we'll see. There is Octobot there for Bunnyhopper. He did choose not to keep Swindle, and I have seen that now and again as pop up as a discussion, right? Of is Swindle good enough to keep? Is it not? Because card draw does unlock the potential of the deck, but you are effectively drawing an additional card by mulliganing, right? So it's a very tricky card to choose, and at least when I play Rogue, it's one of those ones where I always consider keeping it a lot with a decent hand, but always end up throwing it away.
Yeah, it's one of those dangerous statistical traps that you can fall into, because I think in a lot of matchups, particularly when you get down to very refined sample with like top 1000 legend or whatever, as thin as the sample gets, Swindle is a high win rate card, but it's not 100% kept rate card, right? Which generally means that people are keeping it with specific curves, specific combinations. Like you always keep Foxy Swindle, for example, in most matchups. So that pushes up the win rate of Swindle as a card in the opening hand, because it's being kept in the good situation and thrown away in the bad situation, whereas a card like Octobot is close to 100% kept win rate and still has this colossal win rate in the opening hand, which makes it a much better mulligan card overall.
Yeah, though, nothing too crazy here from Bunnyhopper, just Octo. And Demon Hunter doesn't often have good ways to really deal with this, right? Especially on curve. It's not likely that there's a really good answer.
Falcain zoned in today. We've already done our bit to build this up as how important this matchup is going to end up being, and you clearly saw the focus. Even before when I was talking about the mulligan, he was giving the big exhalation of breath. He was making sure he was calm and focused. He made the mulligan, and then there was the celebration as he saw the skull come into hand.
Yeah, based on what he's doing, I think he's zoned in and zoomed in at this point, because his head looks like he's getting closer to the monitor. He wants to see every pixel to make sure he's making the right choice. Just going to go with Spectral Sight, keeping the card draw. And again, as much as Demon Hunter can't really kill this off too easily at this point in the game, it also, due to that and due to Demon Hunter not really playing out minions against it, it does mean that Bunnyhopper does have to plan to try and proc it himself, at least in the short term, right?
Yeah. There is now the threat of Chaos Strike, coin Chaos Strike on the following turn, although I'm certain it's not going to come down with Falcaine's ability to go coin Skull a couple of turns from now.
There would be...
Honestly, Bunny's hand isn't really even that exciting to discount right now, right? Like, it's a great hand to discount if he tops Field Contact on the following turn, but outside of that, there's not really a lot going on in this hand.
Especially with that Throw Glaive for Felkeine, there is actually a little bit of a fear of Moag Throw Glaive to even deal with this. If Felkaine's feeling extra spicy with the Moag plays early. Bunnyhopper probably just going to look at Dagger Up at this point. Like you said, reducing the brain freezes in this matchup is not the best. Not really what you're aiming for.
I promise you this match means as much to Bunnyhopper as it means to Felkeine right now, even though the visuals on their webcams would seem not to suggest that. This is just kind of the nature of their personalities, right? Wow, he is actually doing it. He's actually doing it, Raven. I was not expecting this to happen, but okay. Right on, double Chaos Strike, fair enough. But yeah, back to the point, it's just a reflection of the personalities, right? Bunnyhopper just very stoic, very straightforward, very business-like when it comes down to the business of crushing noobs at Hearthstone, whereas I think, you know, Falcain has always had that expressive, rubber-faced, you know, likability to him that has made him really fun to watch over the course of his few seasons in Grandmasters up to this point.
Yeah, Bunny the Terminator Hopper, I believe is what he goes by now.
That's right.
He's got a secondary game attack.
We like this double Chaos Strike to kill the Octo.
This is a comment you'll probably hate, which means I'm going to say it.
Looking forward to it. Yeah.
I think Felkeine might just be considering, like, we can see the hand is bad for Octo, right? But there are so many hands that could be insane, especially if you just leave it up and let Bunnyhopper draw 3 more cards, let's say. Then does that become too strong, right? The reduction on a larger hand size. And I think the fear of that probably forced Felkeine into this. And I don't even hate it because although you might think it's a bit overzealous, I do think there's just that level of, well, what if Octo just hits 5 okay cards? Is that too many at that point?
Right. I think perhaps from Felkaine's perspective, what he's looking at is like this weird slow hand where nothing's been happening, right? So maybe the hand has Jandice in it and mid-range threats like that. So he feels like clearing out the Octobot to slow down the Jandice is well worth it in that position.
Or like we saw earlier, and it's a hand like that was happened in APAC earlier on, I think today, where it was like double Wicked Stab Alex Tenwu in hand with double Octo reductions or something like that. And it's like, wait, what if it's that and I get OTK'd?
Right.
That's embarrassing. Bunnyhopper is piecing it together now, and with 2 minions on board, I think this might be the time to just cash in this field contact. It's about as good a time and as many targets you're ever going to get against Demon Hunter, right? For these brain freezes, this prize plunderer, whichever one he decides.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this was the exact situation I referred to early, right? Where it was a pretty trash hand to discount unless you drew exactly field contact, and then unfortunately for Bunnyhopper's position, he did draw the field contact but did not get the discount because this hand just goes this turn, right? If he got everything down to 0.
How do you feel about Throwglaive, by the way? I know you've played a lot more OTK Demon Hunter than I have. It's a card I like, but what do you think about actually making it into the deck list?
I like it. I don't necessarily play it on ladder. I actually haven't played that much Demon Hunter on ladder for quite some time, but generally I hadn't been playing it on ladder. But you have to read your metagame, right? I think if you're playing against Rogue, Token Druid, those two in particular, if that's your idea, Throwglaive is the nuts. Because even on like a Token Druid board where like Arbor Up comes down, right, you still have Moarg Throwglaive to still clear up like 4 health minions. And actually push through. So I think it's very, very effective against those 2 decks in particular. Where really, I think Demon Hunter just kind of has this 1 to 2 floating spots that can either be like second Ethereal, Throwglaive, an extra card draw card. Just, you know, each of those cards kind of has different strengths and weaknesses and different matchups. And just goes back to Last Hero Standing theory, right? Where it's what do I want this deck in particular to beat in the way that my lineup functions holistically.
I see.
Okay, I'm going to start getting rid of some of these cards. The old philosophy on nothing. Obviously looks kind of silly, but makes sense because he does want to just rip that skull next turn.
And since he wants to rip that skull next turn, no better response to that than just jamming a Jandice.
Okay. Let's get the carousel, which I heard earlier Derek has a real problem with it being a mech.
Does he? Wait, did I miss this?
Oh yeah, there was a rant.
Why?
Because he just thinks it's a guy on a mechanical thing, whereas I think it was, what's it called? The 4/5 that did 10 damage, the Omega Bot thing, wasn't a mech, and it was a person in a mech.
Right, okay. Interesting. Well, I'd argue the flaw then is with the Omega Defender, because the card's name is Carousel Griffin, right? The Carousel Griffin is a mech. The card's not called Man Riding Carousel Griffin.
You know what? You know what? I wish it was. I would love it. I'd love if card names just described what was the art. Man with pink bear. Okay, someone work on a mod.
Well, I think Bunny should just jam woman in purple and black armor this turn.
What makes something?
And then maybe use a block of ice around an orc's head.
It doesn't look that bad. Yeah. Imagine the illusion goes on weird purple worm monster with gaping mouth.
Yeah, makes sense. Yellow glowing gold guy has a lot of health, doesn't he? So.
All right, okay. We're done.
We're not doing the whole
anymore.
game? Okay.
We've had
cool,
our time. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's just going to brain freeze. Why not? Like I said, against Demon Hunter, you're not really expecting to be able to interact with too many of their minions, right? So just use it to your advantage when you can. Suddenly, Bunnyhopper's just putting on a ton of pressure. Although there is like 2 Immolation Auras and the I-Beams and the Throw Glaive for Felkeine, so...
It'd be much harder if we tried to do that bit on Bunny's turn. On Falcaine's turn, right? He should play card with swirling green art, and then card with swirling green art, and then card with swirling green art.
Yeah. We'd have to just describe what the art means to us. Like, what do we see when we look at this art?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Demon Hunter card art is kind of like mood charty, right? What emotions does this evoke when you look at it?
Say the first word that comes to your mind when you see this card. Lethal. What about this card? Lethal. What about this card? It's probably lethal.
Well, Falcain doing bits here, but he's dumped a lot of resources to clear that board up. He has done it very nicely. While we've been, not taking the game particularly seriously for the last 2 turns, Falcain obviously has, and I think he's navigated an extremely difficult part of the game very skillfully. Where the board has come down, it's basically done net 0 damage over the course of the game, and he's re-engineered a skull back over to the left-hand side of his hand, which is very nicely done. All it's cost him, of course, is the resources he has had to use to deal with that board, which were significant but not game-breaking.
Yeah, I think that's what's impressing me here, because he has the skull, which is great, of course, that's priority number 1. But look at what he's retained. He still has an Immolation Aura to defend. He has combo pieces of Moarg and Fellscream Blast, and still has that Studies as well to go fishing for anything else or reduce the skull for next turn, like whatever he wants to do with it. So it's not like he's had to spend his whole hand and now he has a load of like just random spell damage minions that feel clunky locked up. Like he still has good cards to continue these turns with. And I believe he finished on I-Beam, right?
Yes, I think so.
Van Cleef I-Beam could be a turn hit.
True.
Which is, okay, he's going to use the Ruined Orb because he might just get a secret. Okay, oh no, sorry, of course, Ruined Orb is a rogue card, isn't it?
Yes, it is. No, a bit of an issue with Bunny's Discovers there. So the original choice was Ring Toss Wildfire and the Ruined Orb, which he ended up taking the Ruined Orb off. The Ruined Orb choice went way too quickly for me to see what the other options were, but there you go.
So the 3 options for that were Cold Blood and 2 not Cold Blood. Is all we need to know.
They will never catch me.
Well, that was the one card he didn't want to draw for full cost, but here we are. Still has so many combo pieces left remaining in his deck that it's hard to imagine that this doesn't quite get there. There we go. So now with double Moarg on the following turn, as long as he sequences it properly, he'll be able to get both down for 0 mana. Like he basically just has it for 4 mana next turn. Which, yep, job done.
Yep, kind of tough, right? And again, Bunnyhopper will be almost expecting something close to this, right? 2 skulls have been played. Your opponent has 4 cards left in the deck. I feel like it's more unlikely you are not dead next turn than anything else. So now is it time to Secret Passage for Neophytes?
It's the only out, right? He has 1 Shadow Step and 2 Neophytes left, and he's probably going to need all of the above to be able to stack enough debuffs on the spells to get him out of this spot.
That's an upgrade. Probably.
It's the only out I really see.
So he's going to take some healing up to push some damage, because he still has enough mana after doing all of this to still play Neophytes.
Yep. Still has enough to play double Neophyte and Shadow Step even if he hits all 3 of the good cards from this position, right? That's the thing he limits himself from, like Swindle Outs instead, being able to get there, but he actually has limited options left in the deck to be able to...
There's Shadow.
Anyway.
Oh.
Yeah, okay.
Good effort to go dig in. I think it was 100% the right choice there, and you can just see if he just got a Neophyte, then suddenly it's game on, right? He set up a lot of damage on the board.
Well, the problem is that Fellscreen Blast on the left costs -2 mana right now, right? So even with Neophytes coming down, it really doesn't change that much about how much Felkaine's hand costs to execute the lethal. That's why I was saying, like, you almost needed 3 of them to really do anything significant to Felkaine's hand. And even then, with the breadth of discounts that Falcain had, I think he still would have just had lethal through the maximum amount of Neophyte that Bunnyhopper could have done that turn.
Yeah, I'll be honest, didn't really look at how minus that number is, even though it says 0. But yeah, you are right, of course. And that means Falcain is going to take that game number 1 and off to a fantastic start. As again, Demon Hunter very quickly, especially last week, came up there as one of the decks I think can just sweep a lineup. It's happened in Grandmasters already. It's not like it's an odd thing. And I do think it's just a strong start now, which means Bunnyhopper has Paladin and a Warrior left over, I believe, to kind of counter Felkeine here. And Bunnyhopper's Paladin is the Libram Paladin with the secret package, and his Warrior is of the Rush variety. So with that knowledge, Sottle, how are you fancying his chances going up against even just this Demon Hunter from Felkeine?
Yeah, I think in general his deck has moderate weakness across the board to Demon Hunter. It's not a deck that you would expect to sweep you necessarily, because it's not like your lineup is catastrophic against it. I've seen some lineups throughout the 2 weeks where like all 3 decks are really bad against Weapon Rogue, for example. That's not the spot he's in, but it does start to feel a little bit scary when Demon Hunter starts to stack up wins against you, because I don't think you have like a devastating matchup to really counter Q into that. Rush Warrior is fine, just the amount of chunky minions that you can throw down, especially with Ogremancers stacked in there, which Bunnyhopper does, which is to his benefit in the matchup as well, because they're very difficult to deal with. Paladin, very similar, right? Big pack of mid-range minions and then a little bit of disruption. If you want to call the Ogremantzer the disruption in the Warrior deck, you can look at the Oh My Yogg, for example, as disruption in the Paladin deck instead. So they both approach the matchup in very similar ways, which is to just play mid-rangey boards and destabilize on the other side when they can. But you know, Demon Hunter has all the tools to be able to sweep this series if Felkeine can put together a couple more decent, you know, skull on the left type draws. So I think I think Bunnyhopper would be well within his rights to be concerned about the way this series has opened up so far.
Yep, and that is his Paladin list. And I do like the fact that we're seeing Conviction just sort of appreciated as not just a card you put in like pure aggro Paladin. Just like it's only a 1-of in this list, which is fine, but it's like so often 1 mana Fireball, right? If you want to oversimplify things. And it's just such a good card in if you ever want to stick things to the board, then Conviction gets a good job done no matter what. It's also a holy spell, which means it's an additional option of draw from Knight of Anointment, because sometimes depending on that secret package, Knight of Anointment drawing a secret is not really what you're after. You want something else. You want like Hand of a Doll, you want Libram, you want something just that's actually a playable card. So we'll see if it pays off for him, but I am with you. I think just looking at it, I would be a little bit worried now if I was Bunnyhopper, but also I would have actually queued Warrior at this point if I was him. Maybe I don't have enough confidence in the Paladin in this matchup, but I think I would have gone Warrior, but let's see how it pays off.
I think that also speaks to the way the series pans out in general, where he would rather have his Warrior in reserve. For him, so like this way, he goes Paladin, he wins with Paladin, and then say Falcain queues Rogue to counter queue that, then he has the Warrior to then counter queue the Rogue afterwards, as opposed to going in the other way around, which I think is a little bit more beneficial in the long run. But I like your conviction point, because I think when I'm playing Demon Hunter, the one thing I absolutely love as Demon Hunter is when I can reliably know how much damage I'm taking on any given turn.
Right.
So, you know, for example, against Rush Warrior, they're very scary with the size of board that they can generate. But if you're at like 26 and they have 18 damage on board and they don't have 8 mana to play Troublemaker, for example, honestly, you can just kind of pass that turn and play Skull and do whatever, right? Because you know you're not going to die and you can rebound later with Moargs or whatever else that you pick up. So being able to consistently just say, this is how much damage I take, is a big buff for playing Demon Hunter. So as you say, the ability to just go, well, 1 mana Fireball, here's 6 extra damage that you weren't expecting on this board being built up is a big deal.
And here, look at the opening hands. Although Immolation Aura is good versus this opening, just the fact that Bunnyhopper can make a board out of nothing, which is the first day of school basically, is pretty good, right? Because if he soaks an Immolation Aura through first day of school usage, then it's just 1 less AoE card that he needs to worry about if he can get into some of those earlier, beefier minions. Also, interestingly enough, that Oh My Yogg being in hand is not actually the worst case scenario. Normally you don't want to draw the secrets, but against this, maybe having that secret to play on turn 5 is going to be pretty powerful for Bunny.
True. Yeah, I think having a high degree of control as to when Oh My Yogg comes down. Oh, he actually hit it. I've been waiting so long for Combi Chow to appear from first day of school, Raven. Everyone else gets it. I have not yet been blessed with the Combi Chow, and there it is. Bladed Cultist. Just a 2/3.
Now, interestingly enough, with this hand, do you think it's worth coining out a 1-drop? Especially since that Dormant is going to take a while to get going.
I think he'll hold on to the coin. I think that this was the big question, right? Is like 2-attack minion now or big 2-attack minion later, and Bunny's chosen to go with the Dormant instead, which obviously I respect. Like when you have Dormant minions in your hand, we've seen it with Felmore, we've seen it with the 3/5 rush, just getting it down as early as possible, even coining it out, right, just to make sure that it pops up as early as possible is generally the way. So I respect it, but I think with the hand that Bunny currently has, the coin is also just too valuable to be wasting in this spot.
Yeah, maybe I'm just over negative, but with the hand he's got, I'm like, well, if he doesn't, okay, that helps. But my original point was, well, because it's Libram of Judgment and Libram of Hope, they're so expensive. Like, if he has to coin one of those out, is it then just too late? Would be my worry.
You just got to believe in the Truth Seeker, Raven.
I mean, yeah, 100%. If you just rip Truth Seeker, then fair enough, I'll be quiet. We'll very quickly find out whether Bunnyhopper wants to go 1-1 here and get this Oh My Yogg live, or whether he does really want to hold on to it.
You're not that sharp.
Kind of got to plan out what you'll be doing on the turn
right.
you want to play it otherwise, right? Because if he goes coin Truth Seeker the next turn, that's then the 5-mana turn, and then he gets his hand back. He'll want to be playing like Libram of Judgment, right? Which uses up all his mana at that point, and he won't have the mana available for the Oh My Yogg to block the Skull turn. So I don't think holding on to the Oh My Yogg for the Skull turn really works out particularly well in Bunny's curve, so kind of respect playing it there.
And it did just happen to Cram Session with spell damage on board, so worked out not too terribly for Falcain.
Yeah.
I grow impatient.
Yep. Good old Oh My Yogg.
And Falcain's in the same spot now as Bunnyhopper to an extent where he has to work out what his next turn looks like, because there you go, Immolation Aura looks fine, but it only looks fine, right? It's not a good Immolation Aura. You're not like, wow, this cleared so much, especially knowing that this is going to pop out this turn. But it does just do the job instantly of clearing that space in his hand for Skull on the far left now.
Right.
Coin Truth Seeker just looks too good. It's one of those plays that in any game, if this is an option, you'd have to do some pretty good convincing to say you don't want to make this play and do something else. It's so strong, especially because, as you mentioned, he can Libram of Judgment next turn to just start really piling on the pressure.
Right. Weirdly enough, having drawn exactly Cariel, he may have been rewarded for holding on to the Oh My Yogg, right? He would have been able to go Cariel Yogg on this upcoming turn and just block out the Skull perfectly while still having a very respectable turn by playing a 4/3 Mind Shield. But again, based on the hand that he has, you can see it a little bit more clearly now. He would be playing Libram of Judgment this turn, guaranteed, because he has nothing else impactful to be playing, which means he wouldn't have been able to fit in the Oh My Yogg, which is why you see a card that's normally used to interrupt the Skull in the matchup just being thrown out for very minimal value.
Oh, Falcaine's going to go fishing. And it's kind of pick your poison right now. Does he want to have to deal with the Libram of Judgment now? Or is he more afraid of the healing from Libram of Hope?
I don't think you care about the healing from Libram of Hope. You might care about the 8/8 Divine.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah. Gonna toss it.
It's a little bit misleading though, right? Like, Felkeine has to account for how much that actually costs in Bunny's hand, which to me would have made me feel like it's better to discard the Libram of Judgment instead, because that's the thing that's coming down right now and pressuring you next turn while you play Skull.
That's true, yeah. He does have I-Beam, Moag, Fellscream Blast in hand. I'm not saying he needs to use it all to recover, but maybe Felkeine just thinks, okay, well, just as much as I'm not afraid of his healing, I can heal all this damage back up. And as you mentioned, outside of Conviction, the damage is very reliable, right? Like, Felkeine can pretty much know what he's going to get hit for in the next few turns.
Yeah, I think this deck has a little bit more surprise factor than like Rush Warrior that I was talking about, because there's Libram of Wisdoms, there's Libram of Judgment, there's all that thrown in, even without the Conviction that we were talking about specifically. But yeah, I think Bunny will be in no rush here to throw out as much damage as possible, and he is understanding exactly what the deal is here, even diverting as hard as possible, going with that Conviction, because now he didn't have the option to play Oh My Yogg to disrupt the Skull. This is the next best thing, right? Just threaten lethal. If you play Skull here, unless you hit the 0-mana cards that can dig you out of this, you are just dead this turn.
I also love the fact that he did it in such a way that he would spend all of his mana.
Well, he did it in the way where the buff's guaranteed good to go face, more important.
No, it was purely about the mana expenditure, so.
Okay.
Now, the real question, though, does Felkeine want to play this Skull? Can he afford to? Oh, decision made pretty quick, man.
Yeah, Grimace from Bunny as the Throwglaive starts coming in clutch.
Yeah, and honestly, the more I see Throwglaive, the more I like it, actually.
Fine card.
It's kind of the worst draw, right?
Definitely up there. Definitely up there.
Bunnyhopper's in trouble, I think, now. There's Skull for Felkeine and also 2 very dumpable cards for his next Skull as well, which is pretty sick. And just the fact that Bunnyhopper's decision was good, and you point out perfectly, right? If you play that into the Skull turn, there's either a Skull and he probably dies, or there has to be a delay in some kind of clear, and the clear still has to be pretty good. But Felkeine managed it.
Extremely good.
Yeah, Felkeine
minimal
managed
resources used. It does mean that now the Il'gynoth and the second Fellscream Blast probably have to be found before Felkeine can win this game. He does have that I-Beam, but getting it done with an I-Beam is very difficult unless you have a lot of Moags specifically. So, there's good potential now if Bunnyhopper, if he's being optimistic, that one of those 2 cards can be in the bottom 3, bottom 4 now for Felkeine and might just get stranded down there.
What kind of impact does the double Arcanist make at 0 mana? Is that going to change a lot up here for Felkeine in terms of speed?
It changes a lot in terms of just how quickly you can do the combo, but again, primarily with Felkeine, I was going to say Felkeine Blast. Then. I literally can't name a card properly today, Raven. I know.
We're going back to talking about artwork.
Yeah, I know I'm generally not that good at it, but normally the ones I at least know the name of, I can just pronounce. Fellscream Blast. It will speed up a lot with Arcanist, but still with I-Beam, it really is just Moags that ramp up that damage quickly with I-Beam, and adding spell damage to it because it only hits one target individually doesn't really ramp up that quickly. So, them costing 0, is it going to be impactful? Not particularly, because it's still just about finding that Il'gynoth and finding the other Fellscream Blast, which could still be buried at the bottom of the deck.
Well, you say he needs a lot of Moags, there's 3.
There's 3, yeah.
Let's get in there.
Do all cost 2 mana, though, which is a problem. Normally the
Not for long.
I mean, they do kind of still all cost 3
One
2
costs
mana, though, is the problem.
0 mana.
Yeah, but normally the I-beam lethals come from when you skull a Moarg and then copy that Moarg repeatedly with the philosophy, so that you can just play loads of them for 0.
Falcain just obliterates Bunnyhopper's only minion here.
Yeah.
Bunnyhopper pretty much has to go for the Outlaw Truthseek here. It will reduce down his weapon so he can still cast it, but I think he can't value the lifesteal, right? And he must value the card draw at this point.
I think so, yeah. I mean, critically, he currently just cannot kill that Moarg that's on board.
My next question was going to be, is there a worry that because the Moarg just sticks, he could just be dead anyway? But does 5 health ever really change that? I'm going to choose to say no.
I mean, it does, because it drags you above 24, which is the fair amount of damage that your opponent can do. But over the course of the game, no way. Like, if you can't get significantly above 30, your health total is really just a fraction of the things you have to worry about.
Well,
and game. Not this turn, because he just doesn't have the 4 he needs to play the Il'gynoth. But yeah, that is going to be impossible to resist, I believe, from Bunnyhopper's side now.
Yeah. 0 mana Felkeine Blast is gonna get the job done.
So he has 1+2 spell damage from the Talented Arcanist, doubled twice to 6 and 12, hitting 3 times for 36 damage.
Ooh.
So.
And even importantly, has the Immolation Aura now to, I'll say, beat the Secret. But is there anything that the Immolation Aura could cast that would mess Falcain up here? I don't believe so.
Not with it being at 0, I don't.
Yeah. The big one is Glide.
The big one is Glide, you're not wrong.
Only because it's happened to me before.
Yep.
But Bunnyhopper just going to do what he can.
Shadow Council or whatever the card that turns all your whole hand into demons is, but yeah, at 0 mana, it's just...
yeah. And, oh my, Secret Passage.
Yes.
Yeah, none of those are 0 mana.
But we are continuing to not name 0 mana cards, making the answer to your question still no, he's fine.
Celestial Alignment.
Cataclysm, even in the game. Not even sure if that's the actual name of the card.
Yeah, the extra health even for Bunnyhopper, maybe in some circumstances could have made a difference, but not these. Falcain's going to lock it in. And what a weird game. Felt very odd in it. I actually think, looking at it now, maybe easy to say, but getting rid of that Libram of Hope felt like it paid off for Falcain.
It did. He certainly allowed him to resist a lot of pressure, but honestly, I think he would have been absolutely fine regardless. Because I think on the kind of turn where that came down anyway, that was the turn where he was like, you know, as you said, like obliterating that Aldor Truthseeker that was down as like a 6/8 that turn anyway, right? So I think he would have had the tools to deal with it. I think, you know, the game really turned on that choice from Bunnyhopper to just go maximum damage onto the board with Conviction on the Skull turn, and then that was the real checkpoint, right, for Falcain of saying, okay, I've pressured your Skull out of this game, now you need to have a big answer, and he did have a big answer, basically going back to full with Felscreen Blast #1, and then also using that auxiliary Throwglaive to clean up the remainder of the board afterwards, because it was a big ask that Bunny was presenting. Yeah. Bunny will have known that just like spell damage Moarg Felscreen Blast was not going to clear that board. It would heal, but it wouldn't clear the board. So the big ask was for Falcain to have big healing, because he needed big healing to resist the Libram of Judgment coming through, 15 damage on a stick that would follow it up, and a big board clear, which is very tough to do in that hand if you're also giving them credit for having Skull of Gul'dan on the far left as one of those cards, right? So, you know, big deal overall. That was a crucial turn. I think both players approached it very, very reasonably. And Falcain Falcain, navigated his way through a tricky-looking Demon Hunter game and came out the other side with a 2-0 lead, meaning now Bunny has to do what he did yesterday, Raven, and that is sweep the series with Rush Warrior.
Yes, and if he can get through this matchup of the OTK Demon Hunter, it looks pretty doable from the way I look at it. It will be going up against then either Mage or Rogue next, and then so on, of course. But I think this is doable, but I do think, for me at least, this Demon Hunter is the matchup that he has to win, right? And I know, obviously, if he loses, he's out, but this is just the tough one. And it's one that is winnable. Like, we tested this a lot, actually, a couple of weeks ago, right? It was still, I can't remember where we were. Was it Specialist at that point we were testing a lot? And it was a closer matchup than I thought it was going to be when we did a lot of testing, but it's still, I think, just favoured for the Demon Hunter unless everything goes very, very right for the Warrior.
I think you might be giving me way too much credit for my phenomenal skill as a Demon Hunter player, Raven. I think the stats came out that, I was winning my fair share as Demon Hunter when we were practicing it. I think it was in Specialist, right? Because it was the weird build that I was playing that had like the 2-4 taunt in it that Shaxi was running, I think.
Right. At least for a couple of games you played that, and then you were like, this is dumb. I'm not doing it anymore.
I want this out of my deck. But yeah, like the stats on ladder at least say this is a fine matchup for the Rush Warrior, and it does come down to just too many big, thick boards coming down over and over again. But again, I really do enjoy this matchup. I think it's very fun to play from the Demon Hunter side because I think, as you said, the results we got were fine for the Demon Hunter, and primarily what I was doing in the matchup is just being as greedy with my health as I could possibly bear to be, right? Like, as long as I just wasn't straight up dead to Troublemaker from hand or Alexstrasza from hand, then I would really just tank board states and just draw cards, right? And just say, I'll deal with this board next turn, right? I'll sweep everything up with like a big spell damage, Moarg, Immolation Aura, all in one go. And I'll tank 25 in the process. I don't care. I'll heal it up later, which I think is a really important method to be going for. But far more important than any of that is getting clear routes to Skull of Gul'dan on the left-hand side of your hand. And that is what Felkeine has done very, very well so far throughout this series.
Yeah, and these are the small plays that are very, I think, like difficult to learn as a newer OTK Demon Hunter player, right? Because you could look at that Discover and say, well, if I pick second Skull, and then you could just get rid of Moarg, which sounds a bit silly, but you understand what I mean, then have already played the Raging Fell Screamer, then have Skull into Skull, like back to back, right? But the actual philosophy allowed him to just throw away this Moarg and still retain one in hand, which is a big, big deal.
Yeah, and also just play a 3-5 against a deck that doesn't really punish it for being a Moarg, right? There's no real tools that Bunnyhopper plays that can take advantage of this spell doubling effect. So it just gets to fight for board now as a 3-5, which is actually super clutch for Felkeine.
And important, it just wins that fight because it can kill this parade leader, and Bunny's got nothing to really do about this.
He's got nout, Raven.
Yeah. That's definitely a northern thing, that, isn't it?
It's extremely northern.
I thought so. I've never heard you say that word in my life.
Yeah.
These old bones just keep moving.
I do like this, though. It's saying, well, if you're going to kill a parade leader, I'm still going to start my turn with a parade leader, right? Until Felkeine just says, not today, and just absolutely wrecks it. But I do like the idea from Bunnyhopper because it retains the advantage of sticking parade leader on board. Or at least attempts to.
I like just periodically over the course of the series how, Felkeine started off the series, and I called this out quite clearly, that he was looking focused, he was going deep breath, he was trying to stay calm and composed, and gradually, turn after turn, game after game, he's just slipped back into pure Felkeine mode, where he's emoting, facially emoting as opposed to emoting.
Even his arms. He looks like one of those inflatable, wacky... Here, though, Skull opened up on the far left of his hand, and again, just a decent hand to be able to just throw away as and when to just keep the card draw cooking. Nothing's stuck there. There's no awkward Il'gynoth that he has to start thinking about. Everything just looks good here for Felkeine, but Bunnyhopper, not quite the case on the other side, as once again, he's been beaten on board on curve by a Demon Hunter, which is not something that really should even be allowed.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to reconcile, right? It's like, yeah, Rush Warrior, one of the best board-based decks in the game. And currently losing to my opponent. What did they do? Well, they played a 3-5 and then a 4-4, and I just kind of lost.
Yeah.
Why? Like, how did that happen? But it's just the story of the game so far.
And it's not getting any better. There's no, like, at this point in the game, if Bunnyhopper had one of the 5 drops, whether that's Runtak or Watley, I'd be like, or even an Ogremantcer, I'd be like, okay, rough turn, but there's a plan. There isn't really a plan right now because he's got an Alexstrasza and Troublemaker in hand that aren't going to be active for a very long time.
Yeah, and honestly, there are iterations of the matchup where those are the good cards, but it tends to be the slower ones, right? Where it's not Skull on curve.
It's not the one where you're getting out-tempoed by the OTK Demon Hunter.
Yeah, it's not the one where you're just getting beaten down by Moargs on curve and then your opponent's just going to rip Skull on 6. Because, yeah, as mentioned, you do have the ability to be very liberal with your health in this matchup as the Demon Hunter, and the only cards that really punish you for doing that, now there's less and less Outriders Axe in the meta for Rush Warriors, is just Troublemaker and Alexstrasza. So being able to follow up with those cards late is usually very important for Rush Warrior, but in this case it does just look like Falcaine's going to go way too fast for either of those cards to be relevant.
And because there's a setup for the Skull here, it's all just about what Felkeine wants to commit to this board. Okay, he's going to throw Glaive. I think he was looking at Blood Mage into Immolation Aura to clear things off, but going to do it this way, and yet again, just another nice use for Throw Glaive, considering it's just one card that he's been using, obviously able to use multiple times because of effect.
Yeah. I think he was always going to do this turn. It's just he went to play Blood Mage first, and then I think just as like a security check, his brain was like, well, it works perfectly without playing spell damage.
Right, so I'm just
going to do it that way first, so it doesn't, so I don't have to think about whether it messes up with spell damage or not.
Although I normally just lean straight to Kargath, I am looking at Stonemaul and Command because I think Bunnyhopper just needs cards at this point.
Agreed.
Does get a nice little clear there with the Blade Master, but again, it feels weird to even say like, the Rush Warrior did a good job of clearing this OTK Demon Hunter board. You know what I mean? Like, it feels wrong to be saying that, but it's true. Bunnyhopper needs to just stick something for Maul on the turn here.
All right. It's about as bad as a Skull as you can get without being a total whiff on combo piece discounts. The Ethereal Org Merchant is obviously the lowest impact combo piece, is getting down to 0. Not only does it just literally add the least damage to the combo, but it's the smallest discount as well, since it only costs 1 to begin with. But it's not to say that Felkeine isn't in a wonderful position, because he absolutely is here.
Demons?
8 cards in hand, not really seeing any reason for for Felkeine to commit anything there.
Double jump was the thing, but that doesn't actually do anything, right? That you can't do next turn anyway, so that's good. Bunnyhopper does get hold of Watley, though, so he can at least be saying, right, there's a plan now, as he can smooth out that curve for Troublemaker and potentially Alex.
Yeah, and with the Athletic Studies discount still available, he can just jam out a bumper car if he would like to.
Also, that does just, if it sticks, naturally reduce the Tent Trasher as well.
Yeah, Tent Trasher would still be 4, though. It's currently receiving the Athletic Studies.
Sure. It would, like, keep it at 4, right?
Yeah. Keep it to 4, yeah. I think the consideration for Bunny was, whether holding on to the Studies discount allowed him to do more impactful things next turn, like maybe get Anchorman and Tent Trasher down in one turn, but I don't think that was ever going to be particularly realistic, so he just went with front-loading the 1 extra damage now.
I'm being quiet to work out whether that's lethal somehow, as Felkeine seemed either very excited or very disappointed at that draw. I was going to say...
yeah, it is.
Oh my.
It actually is.
I was just about to say he could get, if the mech lives, he could get Sword Eater Tent Trasher down, but Felkeine, who cares? That is going to be game. That is going to be the sweep, and he's going to be the victor here.
Yeah, exact
I-beam
mana,
was
32
exact,
damage. And as I said, multiple Moards is how you get the lethal over the line with the I-beam in the end. Bunnyhopper headset off already, looking dejected as you might expect. But that's the story of the day now. It's Felkeine who has done exactly what he has needed to do today, and that is defeat Bunnyhopper. Look forward now to a semi-final and a potential final tomorrow, because as Lorinda pointed out to us, he could be looking as high as 10th by the end of this week if he's able to get out of it. It's not just creeping out of the relegation zone, it's catapulting out of the relegation zone. Not quite to the degree that Felkeine did last week, but you can see how so much some of these draws and moments really meant to Felkeine. But really, it was just another brutal sweep in Last Hero Standing. Not quite to the level what we saw from Boston in the previous series, but it was 3 Demon Hunters, 3 Skulls, 3 victories, and a very dejected Bunnyhopper on the other side.
Yeah, it's a rough way to lose, of course, being swept by a single deck, and it's why LHS, although a great format, can feel very punishing and a bit negative sometimes, where it's like, oh, I lost to OTK Demon Hunter 3 times, great. But I mentioned even, like, I think a day into last week, which was the first week of LHS, as soon as I saw OTK get played in Last Hero, I was like, wait a minute. This looks insane, because there just aren't that many decks that have real game against it. And once again, with everyone generally banning Priest, well, you can't ban 2 classes, right? And then you look at that and say, well, OTK just does good enough. Maybe if it doesn't sweep, but it gets, as you mentioned, like 1.5 wins per series or so, then like that's a fantastic deck. And as you can see, with the right draws, it very easily can sweep. So again, just a rough one for Bunnyhopper, of course, and I know we won't be too happy about that, but I congratulate